On this edition of Behind the Dashboard, we are going to introduce you to Jacob Luckey of Kicker. He's the global trainer for all of Kicker's outreach. He's become kind of the face of Kicker, and also he's the host of the Kicker Unmasked show online. Why I reached out to Jacob was to talk about more of that. He's under 30, all right, so he's a bit of a unicorn, but I want to tell you a story about how he got hired by Kicker and he's worked his way up through the company. And I want to inspire you guys to know that you can work for these bigger companies quite easily and it's attainable. And Jacob is a living example of how to do this. All right. We are here with Jacob Luckey of Kicker to have a conversation today of his experiences and actually transitioning from being an average Joe to now the face of Kicker.
One of many.
How you doing today, Jacob?
Doing good, man. Just getting settled back in. We did a training in Joplin yesterday, and we trained several tech school kids. Aaron and I actually taught class for about 2.5 hours. Nice. So we just unloaded the van and got settled back in, and here I am.
But I heard a rumor that the night before you had a little problem with your car.
Oh, dude, yeah. So we were all getting together. We were going to go eat dinner, all the competitors at Mariachi's. And so I get in my truck, start driving there, and I'm going over this bridge in town, and I hear a zip, and everything dies in my car. And I'm like, oh, crap, man. Now what? Like, I just got everything installed a couple days before. I got it tuned and everything. And I'm like, great. Now the night before the contest, my stuff died. So I'm sitting there at dinner, and I'm sitting with Ernie and Brian from ARC, and we're all just sitting there having dinner. And I'm talking to Ernie about what's going on, and Brian looks at me and he goes, "Do you want to compete tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Would you do anything it takes to compete tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yes, I would." And he said, "All right, I brought an extra DSP with me in my truck." He said, "If you can't get it figured out, send me a text and I'll come help you install the new DSP, and we'll tune it and we'll have you ready to go for the next morning." That to me is the epitome of like class and kindness in our industry, man. Is somebody that sees that you're interested in competing and you've got the passion, and even though we're technically competitors, he was still willing to give me something, help me install it, and make sure that I could be there to compete the next day without trying to like sabotage anything, or it's not like that. It's everybody's willing to help each other out,
and he's from a different manufacturer too, so theoretically you guys, what was those kids, what level of education were they?
So they were high school students, and in Joplin, you've got your high school, and your tech school is attached to it. And these guys are learning all about like automotive, like engines, electricity, how it works. But they're going to be competing in our mobile electronics Skills USA competition. So that's the connection. That's why we went up there.
Nice. And was it all walks of life too?
Yeah, all walks of life. I would say mostly like blue collar kids,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, anybody. There were a couple women in there too, actually, in the automotive course. So it was good to see that, and we don't have a whole lot of women in our industry or automotive adjacent industries. So it is nice to see that.
No, and we have my sons who are 18, 17. That we have a school here where you can do plumbing, electrical, construction, and it takes off, I think, 2 years out of the 4-year program at high school, which is probably similar to the Skills USA.
Yeah, it sounds like that's very, very similar to it. And it probably the ultimate goal is just to prepare them for a career, right? Which is the same thing for skills.
Yeah. No, it's we can joke about skills, but even on a YouTube search nowadays, you look up how to use a multimeter, and you might say, well, my dad had one on a toolbox, and he'd pull it out and dust it off, and you would use it. But you're seeing now 15, 16, 20 million views on how to use a multimeter. And you think that, in schools like you're doing, they would be introduced to this kind of technology, even though it's been around for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's, I imagine, like people just trying to DIY stuff around it. Because, the first step is probably like you Google, okay, I'm having this problem. What's the step to, and then they find out they need this thing, and, it goes from there.
Be interesting. Did many of the kids you saw at the training, we'll use the term loosely, did they own their own vehicles?
A couple of them did. One student in particular already had an audio system set up in his car. He had a
Nice.
SCAR, like a 1500-watt amplifier, and a
Yeah.
couple of tins and a ported box firing into the back seat. And of course, we're there to teach audio, and he was all excited. He had me go sit in his car and listen to it, and it had a fair amount of output. Man, it sounded pretty good.
I did an interview with Derek from Wilson Audio Labs, and he made a great comment that he goes, it doesn't matter where they got hooked, is it Walmart or from a friend, an uncle, whatever, as long as they're in the car audio, let's not judge them on equipment or how they got in there. And I was like, that's a pretty refreshing attitude when it comes to a lot of things. Some people say, if it's not this, it's not this. It doesn't make it very inviting if you have a snobby attitude.
No, and that's the way that I look at it, and the way that most of us here look at it is a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah,
So as long as the industry is growing in some way, we're all growing. We're all going to start doing better as a result.
nah, absolutely. Now, one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you was to talk about, since you're under 30 and it's very rare and you don't have, this, I know the lights disguise me quite well. Um, when you were getting in, how long have you been with Kicker now?
I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary
10
with
year,
Kicker.
10
I
years. So
think
what
in
age did
2
you
months.
start?
I started out when I was 18.
18. So when you were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you were mentioning before the show that you applied for a warehouse job at Kicker. When did you start to look around and go, this is a pretty cool place. I might want to work here a little bit more.
Well, it kind of started from day one. So, when I was just looking for a different job, and I had some friends in high school whose parents worked at the Kicker headquarters, and so I
Yeah.
swung by, stepped in the museum, and picked up a job application. And in the museum, we've got all sorts of classic cars and
Mhm.
subwoofers everywhere. And I looked around, I was like, "Dang, this is a pretty cool place." Maybe working here wouldn't be such a bad thing, but my only experience up to that point had been like cooking food basically for people, and
Yeah.
just wanted something else. But actually, I think the initial reason I went in was because one of my friends told me that their dad, Randy Botts, could put speakers in my car for me because he worked at the Kicker
Oh,
headquarters. So I went there to look for him. I didn't know anything about what Kicker was, and they said, "Yeah, we don't really do customer vehicles here, but I'll let them know you came by," type thing. And of course, I'd never heard anything back, but I
yeah.
picked up an application while I was there, and that's just kind of how it started. So
But it also is interesting that you started in the warehouse, and we'll say at the bottom, and then and now what's call a spade. You are very prominent in Kicker, and you're getting out there and doing the trainings, and you do the Unmasked show. But a lot of young people seem to be afraid or think they're going to start higher up the food chain, and I'll use that term. How did you like starting, at the bottom and working your way up?
man, to be honest with you, I think that's probably the way that I think I should have done it.
Nice.
I like, in retrospect, I like the path that I took. I think at the
Mm,
time when I was starting at the bottom, I may have felt frustrated because things weren't moving as quickly as I wanted them to. But retrospectively, I think I had spent a year or 2 years in each position that I've held at
mm,
the most. And I really did move pretty quickly. But, starting at the bottom, you get an opportunity to meet lots of people within the building and start to make those connections within the company. Like, I
hmm.
started out delivering mail to people that worked here. I was in the receiving department. So I would
Nice.
literally get like their Amazon packages and stuff and go take it to their desk and say, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And start to
Yeah,
meet people, and they start to know your face. And then from there, people get to know you a little bit, see if they want to work with you. And then
yeah.
from there, the world is kind of your oyster. So
You probably had the thing that's not used too much is manners and a little bit of positive presentation of yourself then too, though, to be able to talk to people. Like if you're doing mail, you can't just walk by and go, you know what I mean? Here's your thing. So seems like a very important skill, though, that probably helped you move up.
yeah, I think the most important thing. And, I wouldn't say that when I was 18, I had like the best presentation of myself, but I would say the most important thing would be having having that positive attitude and a willingness to learn. And
Mm,
if
mhm.
people see that willingness to learn in you, and they, you're not that guy that you already think you know everything, then they're more willing to give you a chance and take you under their wing and everything like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, no, years ago, VP of sales was telling me that if you have a big head and you got to walk sideways through the door, you're useless, or you're not gonna go up in the company. And it was very interesting that a gentleman who was very high up at the time with a company similar to Kicker said that keeping an open mind and always wanting to be learning and be curious will take you way further in life than thinking you're all that in a bag of chips.
mhm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, as a matter of fact, starting in the warehouse at 18, I had no audio experience
Hmm.
whatsoever when I got
Hmm.
into the industry. And that attitude, I think that willingness to learn, uh, particularly when I moved into tech support,
Hmm.
the supervisor Travis was a really important mentor of mine because he
Mm.
taught me everything that I know electronically about amplifiers, and a lot of my troubleshooting skills come from that department. But I didn't know anything when I started. It was all learned on the
Mm.
job, and you've
Mm.
got to be receptive to the things that people are trying to teach you. And if again, yeah, if you've got a big head, you think you know everything, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Now, do you think I'm going to be watered down a bit? Like, so when someone calls you with a problem on a 1,000-watt amplifier, let's just say, and it has power ground and it turns on, it's making noise. Um, and you said you didn't have much hands-on experience, say in a car, but utilizing, let's just say, the switches and the interfacing of the amplifier. Do you find that is actually more important than understanding how to hook it up?
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, hooking it up is that's one thing, but like if you couldn't, yeah, I would say it's more important because ultimately the end result is what you're after, right? It's about your
Mhm.
sound and how the system is going to perform. And if you don't know the switches, the in panel of the amplifier, you're not going to get good sound in your vehicle, right? You could
Yeah.
have your settings all out of whack and stuff like that. But I think getting it installed is the first hurdle. But
Mhm.
once you have that down, it's very similar from vehicle to vehicle,
Yeah.
and uh, yeah, I would agree with that statement.
Yeah, no, it's and it must be tough, even to when someone wants to argue over technology. Hey, that's not how this works. And you're like, well, actually, I know Dave down the hall that that implemented that technology. I think he's right.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the cool things too about being here is, in technical support, if we had a customer like that and we had a situation or a stubborn issue that we couldn't track down, we could actually walk downstairs and go ask the literal engineer that designed the product, like, hey, what's going on? They could tell us, or we could put them in touch with the engineer, and sometimes they'd be willing to work with them. So that is one of the nice things about being here.
Well, that's also, I think, a big part that people might not realize with Kicker is the engineering that they still offer and having engineering staff, and even in the same building. It's not like it's I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but saying overseas or in another country by having everything localized is actually a big advantage.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it definitely is. And even in warranty, if we're having a problem with an amplifier and the customer sends it in, we can go check on it downstairs. If there's a specific case that they're having issues with it playing after 20 minutes or something like that, we can go grab their amplifier from warranty, bring it upstairs to our tech bench, plug it in on the
Mm,
tech bench, and test for that specific scenario on the tech bench. So it's a
mm,
lot more intricate, I think, than a lot of
yeah.
people realize.
Yeah, you're not just swapping out a board and throwing it out the door, because what if that board had the same problem?
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the products with Kickers had several birthdays, and there'll be a V1 or a V2 or V3. And you might know, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, that V2 had this problem, which to say couldn't do 2 ohms mono bridged, and then but B B3 can.
Mhm.
Um, how important do you think it is to have that kind of history and be able to go back with something like that instead of just having it's the same amp for 10 years, but they just said, but there's no versions and they would not know about that.
Yeah, no, it's very important. And there have been a couple of products where stuff like that has happened in the past. I mean, nobody's perfect. Being able to have the different, like the V1, the V2, the V3, and having those products serialized, we can see like when it was
Mm,
produced, when it was sold, and if a customer's calling with a particular issue that we know other units have had in the past, we can track it. We can literally track it down to the range of products that it was produced in, know when the problem appeared, and then we can test
oh,
other products from the same batch. We've got a really tight lid on our QA in that regard. Also, knowing that if we're still continuing to see like issues with the product after we've made a revision, because of knowing which version or which batch it was from, say, okay, well, we did fix this with newer ones. We're not having that problem with the newer ones. So
yeah.
we'll just replace that and then continue to keep an eye out for any future problems. So it definitely helps.
Back in the day, we'll say it might have been an amplifier with just power and ground and then crossover, right? That was kind of how it was. And now you're seeing a lot of these amplifiers having some like correct me if I'm wrong, it's new LX amplifiers that have the DSP light, we'll call it, inside of it. That you have
Yeah,
like you have electronic crossovers and stuff. With those now, when someone has a problem, and they all know an uncle or a buddy that's installed an amplifier before and done it all. But when do you think the point is someone goes, we should call? When do you think that is for most people?
for most people, it's after they've already tried and they can't execute it or can't get it to
Yeah.
work properly. And we've tried to address that too. Like when you open up a kicker box these days, you've got a big red stop sign right on the top of the package that says stop. Call tech support if you're confused or have any problems. But ultimately it's still like they get it in the car, they might get it working, but it doesn't sound right, and then they're like, okay, something's wrong, let me call. So it's always, you are most of the time dealing with like something on the back end, something that somebody's
Yeah.
already messed up.
After the fact kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, exactly.
No, I peruse Reddit a lot because of this whole channel, and it still blows me away. And people go, "I'm having a problem with Kicker," and I'm like, you know that they do pretty well lifetime support on anything they've ever had, and they have all the manuals. Why aren't you calling them?" And I say it all the time, and it surprises me when people don't think, that I know Kicker's an anomaly. Because I'll say maybe let's use Pioneer for example, that they might not know nothing about an amplifier from 20 years ago
Hmm.
because they've gone through probably engineering and different manufacturing plants around the world. Where Kicker, I believe, has all the information going back almost to day one. Is that correct?
It sure is. And as a matter of fact, we've got a bunch of binders with
Nice.
paper, we've got a bunch of binders with paper that when I was in tech support, I actually organized them by year, put them in this like file cabinet. So we can support things going back all the way to like the gold letter subwoofers or the original solo barracks. And I mean, we've even got some of the literature going back to the original Kicker boxes that even have like pricing and stuff like that on it for back in the day. So yeah, I mean, we literally support anything we've ever sold to the best of our ability. There have been one or two times when I've been stumped trying to find some information, but I would say that's usually on old international products that we
Yeah.
sold like 20 years ago, like the EX amplifiers or something like that. And there's not a whole lot of them floating around.
I had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Irby. And one thing he mentioned was at Kicker, we have X amount of families. He never said employees. He never said anything. He said families. And now going back to when, you first started, and then obviously you did the mail and you worked your way up. But when did you feel that, hey, this is more than a job?
It was probably just a few months after starting,
Oh,
because
wow.
I did have that opportunity to go meet pretty much everybody in the building delivering their packages and stuff. You get a sense of the average kind of attitude that everybody has, once you visited all 200 employees multiple times in the building, you're like, okay, well, everybody's pretty happy here, and you
Yeah.
start to notice the little things that Steve did to take care of us. Like, I don't know if you've worked in warehouses a whole lot or if how many you've worked in. A lot of the warehouses I've been to are not heated, they're not cooled, they're, just out. They hardly have any insulation. They're sometimes miserable to work in, but Steve has heated and cooled our entire facility just so that even, your warehouse workers are comfortable and warm or cool in the summer. And I mean, nobody has to work in awful conditions, and
Mm.
once I began to notice these things, that's kind of really when it set in, like, hey, this place is a little bit different than other places I've worked.
Hmm. Now that you're involved, and I know this past year, a lot of people might not know that you are now a seasoned competitor. You're no longer a rookie. Jumping into cardio competitions for a lot of people can be very overwhelming. And
Mhm.
there's lots of advice, and there's lots of forums and videos and etc. What made you decide to throw your hat in the ring, so to speak? And I don't get me wrong, I know you're not doing this huge elaborate, you changed your whole dashboard and ripped out all your seats or anything, but what made you go, I'm going to try and go one step further?
What made me do it, what pushed me over the edge, was the fact that we held SQ at HQ last year. And up until that point, I'd never competed in a sound quality or, SPL contest or anything like that. But I'd always kind of dabbled. I've always wanted to make my vehicle sound as good as it could. And I wanted to learn how to do time
Yeah.
delay and equalization, all that stuff. And now I had a real opportunity with sanctioned judges and multiple organizations coming
Hmm.
to my hometown. And I was like, well, it's now or never. Like, I might as well. This is as easy as it's going to get. I don't have to
Yeah.
drive somewhere. And
Yeah.
so um, that's all it took. And I threw my hat in the ring and had a blast. And honestly, getting that first score sheet from the mask judge and seeing everything that he thought I needed to improve on, that
Hmm.
was the moment where I was like, okay, now I know where to go from here. Now I know what to improve on. And so it really just has turned into this thing for me where it's like, all right, I think I fixed that now. So let's wait till
Yeah.
and see if anything changes on the scorecard. So but beyond that is awesome. All the people you meet are going to be awesome. Everybody demos their cars. Nobody's nose up in the air. Nobody has secrets they won't share with you or anything like that. Like, it really is like a tight knit community with just a lot of people that love what they do. I think once you start, you're going to continue to do it.
It's the one thing I joke about. I haven't had, like, even people who might not be, I don't know many bad people in car audio, and even the bad ones aren't really that bad. You just got to kind of figure out why they're that way. You know what I mean? But I heard a rumor that the night before you had a little problem with your car.
Oh, dude, yeah. So we were all getting together. We were going to go eat dinner, all the competitors at Mariachi's. And so I get in my truck, start driving there, and I'm going over this bridge in town, and I hear a zip, and everything dies in my car. And I'm like, oh, crap, man. Now what? Like, I just got everything installed a couple days before. I got it tuned and everything. And I'm like, great. Now, the night before the contest, my stuff died. So
Yeah.
I'm sitting there at dinner, and I'm sitting with Ernie and Brian from ARC, and we're all just sitting there having dinner. And I'm talking to Ernie about what's going on, and he looks at Brian, looks at me, and he goes, "Do you want to compete tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Would you do anything it takes to compete tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yes, I would." And he said, "All right, I brought an extra DSP with me in my truck." He said,
Yeah.
"If you can't get it figured out, send me a text, and I'll come help you install the new DSP, and we'll tune it, and we'll have you ready to go for the next morning." That to me is the epitome of like class and kindness in our industry, man. Is somebody that sees that you're interested in competing and you've got the passion, and even though we're technically competitors, he was still willing to give me something, help me install it, and make sure that I could be there to compete the next day without trying to like sabotage anything. Or it's not like that. It's
Yeah.
everybody's willing to help each other out. And
And
man,
he's from a different manufacturer too. So theoretically, you guys fight for show space for amplifiers and subwoofers around the country, and he still said, "Hey, let's help each other out."
Yeah, man. Man, he would have saved my butt that day and got me back in the contest. You know what the problem was? Those little connectors on the Moscone DSP. My
Yeah.
ground wire just slipped out.
Yeah.
That was all it was. So I got everything pulled apart, put my ground wire back in, everything worked. Big sigh of relief,
Yeah.
and texted him and let him know, "Hey, man, we're not gonna have to stay out till 2 a.m. tonight."
It's actually it's funny you said that. My son who's graduated now, and his car was making some noises and stuff, and I said, "Just turn it off and wait." He's like, "What are you doing, Dad? We gotta do this. We gotta do this." No, just wait. Just wait. Let's start the car now and have a look. Do you feel better now? Yes. See, your mind's a little bit.
Hmm.
I know a lot of times, like you said, it was a simple thing. It was a ground. It just came out, but it's just we all, oh my god, is it blown? Is it this? Right?
Yeah,
And
instantly worst case scenario.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like my amps all got my speaker. Don't tell me my amps all work and all my speakers are blown, right? But that's the nature of the beast of a lot of this stuff is that it is a little bit voodoo in some ways. And I use that term because when you're adjusting a crossover or whatever through any kind of digital medium, it's hard to picture exactly what's going on. Like you don't see a slider or a hard switch like you used to. So are you going to compete again this year?
Yeah.
World
Um,
finals?
oh, we'll see about that, man. But I'm gonna at least go to the shows that are within a 4 or 5 hour radius of
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Stillwater, Oklahoma, because my truck is pretty old. I don't know that I trust it driving. I think finals this year are going to be in Conway, Arkansas, right? Which is four hours
Honestly,
away.
I can't figure it out. One organization is going to be over here, some are over here. Like one was talking about doing it, I think in April. I've never heard of finals being in April before because even with weather, I mean, as I'm located in Canada and you said you're in Oklahoma, just at in April, the roads can still get snow or even get some extreme weather. And opposed to October or November, it's usually snow hasn't landed yet. So.
I mean, who knows, man? But in any case, yeah, I'm at least planning to go to SQ at HQ because it's right
Yeah.
here. I'm going to try to attend the same show that I did last year in Conway if they have it. Heat Wave, I'd like to go there. And there
Yeah.
was one coming up this weekend that I was planning on attending, but something came up with my grandparents. So I'm going to go visit them and see everybody. So,
Would you say that you were one of the younger competitors competing?
yeah, I would say that for sure. It's the people my age that I know by name are myself, Brandon, and Brandon's another employee here at
Oh
Kicker.
yeah.
But there were a couple other guys that I met at one or two of the other shows that were around our age. But I would say most everybody is a fair bit older than us, like maybe
Yeah.
in their late 40s, early 50s.
That one of the first things you did when you were young is you changed the stereo out just because the stereos are so bad from the factory. Even
Hmm.
before you put rims on or anything, you change the stereo. Now, a lot of times now, society has changed a little bit. And, having nice big rims or, even lighting now or even roll bars or side steps, they're quite common. What do you think people, let's just say under 30, would you find growing up was a big trend from 16 to 30? What was the first thing that they did to their vehicle?
For me and my friends and in the circle that I ran with, it was cold air intake. That was the first thing we did
Yeah.
to our cars because it was a easy thing that we thought got us a bunch of power. But
Yeah.
the circle that I ran in was all about performance modification. So it started with like your cold air intake, and then it
Yeah.
started with maybe suspension, and then maybe you got a little bit more into it and you upgraded the heads on your car and added a cam or
Okay.
something like
Yeah.
that. And it was, but once you got the main things out of the way, that didn't require a whole lot of work. It oftentimes was, yeah, I've got to replace
Yeah.
my speakers and put a radio in the car. Because
Yeah.
for me, I was driving a 95 Firebird Trans Am, and
Oh.
that thing, it had the monsoon system in it at one point, but I had to replace it. And then I had an 86 Camaro, and those speakers were totally rotted out and just missing. And speakers were probably number three or four on the list behind like cold air intake, suspension upgrades, and maybe you upgraded your brakes or something like that,
Yeah.
and
But those are all V8 cars, right?
yeah.
Essentially, like
Oh yeah.
they are the kind of pinnacle of modification. It's not like you were doing what was it, like the 2.8
Yeah,
V6 that was available in some Camaros that, like, we're talking about a dog motor. You're not.
or the old Iron Duke on the
Yeah.
third gens.
Yeah. So 86 Camaro, is that still around headlights?
No, that one had the square headlights.
It
It
is a
had
square, eh?
dual square headlights on each side. Yep.
Because that was the car was the IROC style, right? With
Yeah.
when they went to the square, that was the car growing up. That, like, I hate to say it, you had a Mully and you had those T roofs, and that was the
Yeah.
car. That was the
Yeah, dude.
car.
Mine was an IROC with the T-tops, and I did get a lot of mullet jokes, man. I got that all the time.
Did
But
you do the subs with a free air in the back where you just put the board across and mount the speakers, or did you actually put a box in there?
so I found a fitted box that I put
Nice.
down in that little hatch
Yeah.
down there, and it had I think it had 2 tins in it.
It was funny years ago, the IROC style, like you use a step bit for getting a power wire through the firewall. It used to be like dunk, dunk. And then I did one in the 2000s and it went right through the firewall. Metal difference between the generations was insane. It blew me away when GM in the I call it the plastic era of cars,
Oh yeah.
how they changed a little bit from what they were.
Yeah, man, and it's it's all about money, the changes they were making, trying to save a
Yeah.
buck here and there, increase fuel mileage or whatever it is they were trying to achieve at the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, isn't that crazy? And
Yeah.
going even further back, you had the smog era cars in the
Yeah.
70s where they just choked everything out. So,
I talked to a guy and I said, because with 3D printers now and the CAD and all the let's say modern fabrication techniques, a gentleman was talking to me about what if I just made new GM parts, because now those vehicles are like, even though you're 30 and you go and now you say 20 years, I know you were 10, but hear me out. But so those cars that you grew up with now are 20 years plus. And
mhm.
so now all those GM plastics are falling apart, especially in certain areas of North America due to
Oh yeah,
heat and stuff. So it was very. He was talking about like, what if I made just GM parts for the trucks and the Camaros, like all this,
oh
the Corvette, the Camaros, and all the trucks. And he goes, I'd have a business right there just doing dash pieces.
yeah, dude, he'd make a killing just off of dash
Yeah.
pieces. I mean, man, I remember trying to find an intact dash for my 95, 96
Yeah.
Firebirds was like pulling teeth, and people wanted 400 or 500 bucks for them. And then
Yeah.
if you got one, you were lucky if you didn't break it putting it in the car. You know what I mean? So yeah, dude.
Well, and even that, like 95, we can joke if it's a 95 from 2020, that's a 30-year-old vehicle now. And a lot of people, like I had a 91 S10. That's what I got when that was my first car at 16. I had a 91 S10. And people, you start talking like, Jesus, that's 40 years ago. And even for yourself, and even though, and I'm 50, I've never hidden it for anyone, but like you're talking about a car that is 30 years ago now, and a classic car is defined as 20 years old.
Man, my 2004 pickup is considered a classic car. That blows my mind.
And it's weird to think now too that manufacturers might stop supporting those vehicles for parts. And if you like, Ford in your case, or genuine Chevy parts or whatever, it'd be very interesting. Now these things are getting 40, 50 years old. When does the manufacturer support stop? With the newer vehicles, which everyone says you can't change the radio out, but obviously you can add bass in different forms. Do you find people are calling you more now on 20 and 20?
I can't really speak to that because I don't take as many tech calls
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
I do know that our tech guys are fielding a lot of calls from those years. What they're recommending in most cases are a couple of key locks to fix the
yeah.
signal coming out from those radios.
The key lock's an interesting piece, and we've spoken about it before, that it's has a lot of technology that people don't realize in the little black box. It might be a little overwhelming because, as we alluded to earlier, was there's no hard switches. There's no like, hey, I click this here to do this.
Yeah.
And what is your best advice for? And we can call. I don't want to call key lock low tech, because it actually is quite high tech for what it does. It's a great example of, with vehicles and products like that, you might want to be preemptive and asking how they work and how I'm going to integrate it before I purchase it even.
Because what you're going to do a lot of times is research what the solution is, and you might hit and find the key lock is the thing online. That's something where if you're not sure, I would definitely suggest finding like a YouTube video and seeing, okay, how do you run the setup, how do you install it. To be honest, for most of your DIY guys, is a pretty daunting install. First of all, an LOC, one that has onboard processing. I mean, at the very least, I would recommend finding a video that explains how to use it, or maybe even calling tech support and asking if they think it would be good in your application, which I know for a lot of people, calling tech support is oftentimes like off the table, because for
Yeah.
a lot of companies, technical support, they may not be a person on the other side of the line, or that may be somebody that doesn't speak English that great, or something like that. I mean, what a lot of people may not know about us is that all of our guys work upstairs here. and tech support, where they're here 8 to 5, just like the rest of us, and answer emails. If you're watching this and you're curious about a product, don't be afraid to call our guys. They're all super cool and they can help you out and make recommendations. If that's not an option for you, then like YouTube is probably what I would suggest, just to get an idea anyway.
But caution on some of that level of expertise that might be on YouTube sometimes can be questionable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, man. Um,
Is that a nice way to put it?
yeah, you're absolutely right.
One interesting comment I heard at the recent Knowledge Fest was if you're going to buy your own gear for whatever reason, and maybe get a shop to put it in, give them a call or go in and say, hey, I want to buy these products for this, this, and this reason. Can you help me out? Or, hey, I want to get this installed here. Because some people, it seems to be an aversion where, like, what's to say I bought a Kicker product and I go to a dealer that doesn't sell Kicker, and what's to say they're Rockford, and I'm just using it as in this example, and they go, well, I don't want to install that because we don't sell it, which is poor attitude, to be honest, to have.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it interesting of, hey, I want to buy this product because it does this in the car. Like you're saying, a car that has a certain head unit has to talk a certain way to preemptively talk to someone. But it's interesting that Kicker has that available to have a conversation. So like you're saying, is they're more than welcome. Like, hey, I'm thinking about buying, or my dad's giving me, I don't know, 2020 F-150, and I want to add a subwoofer. What do you guys recommend? And I might purchase it from an authorized dealer, either online or locally, or I want to do it myself. And I think that's the other thing a lot of people discount is wanting to get these hands dirty. Not these ones anymore, but
Yeah.
for people.
No, I would agree, because, I mean, ultimately what you're trying to do is just improve something about your car or improve your experience, and wanting to is the first step towards that. I mean, and I've got a buddy that he lives in New Jersey, and he's always known that I've been a car guy my whole life, and he would like rib me about it all the time. But now he's getting to the point, like, it started for him because he had to replace something on his own, but the mechanic was going to charge a lot of money, and it was actually a pretty easy fix, so he did it himself. And now he's starting down that rabbit hole of modification, and now he's wanting to improve things, and he's actually talking about coming down here and spending like a week or two at my place, and if I buy all this stuff, will you teach me and help me put this stuff in my car for stereo? I'm like, yeah, dude, that'd be awesome. It all starts with a want and a dream, and I don't think we should discount that.
No, honestly, it is, a spark has to start somewhere. And a lot of people want to poo-poo on those sparks. And it could be anything from plumbing to roofing to whatever.
Yeah.
To like someone might be into something, and who are we to say no? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, there, with social media and a bunch of other things, you might say, I was thinking about doing this, and you'll get 20 naysayers, so to speak. And then one guy goes, dude, go for it. And that go for it can make all the difference for a person.
Mm-hmm. And for a lot of our stores out there, that's the difference between another customer in the door or not. Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now they're starting to make calls. They're starting to see where they can buy that thing, or maybe who can do it for them if they decide they can't do it themselves. So,
or they get in over their head, and that happens, right?
Yep. And that's when we get our tech support calls. Like, hey, I just cut through this big harness in my engine bay, and now my car won't start. Oh man.
So is there ever a time you've had to say, like, dude, put your tools away and you better get a professional? Like, is there like, you're like you're trying, I know you're trying to be politically correct and you're trying to be encouraging, and then like, honestly, like, you're like, bud, you're over your head.
Yep. It's either at the beginning of the conversation when they say, what's a multimeter? We can try a few things, but you're going to have to take your car to the shop. Or they've done something like absolutely catastrophic, and it's like, okay, if I try to help you with this, it could be like an insurance situation. So, we're gonna, you got to go have somebody fix this for you.
Yeah, no, it's a fine line being helpful and then opening yourself for liability.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Coming from the mailroom, and someone would come across, like you said, you're delivering mail, and there's someone there, and I'll use like Gary Biggs, for example. I'm sure you've met him a little bit, and he was quite the celebrity in his generation. How do you, it must be a little bit different for you that you might not know about him, but you know him, and then like, oh, dude, that guy's the real deal. You know what I mean? So how's it like meeting this inner circle of celebrities that someone might not know.
They're just people, just like the rest of us, and like there's several people like that that have worked here or still work here. And one example I'm going to throw out there is Kevin Campbell. And I don't know if
Mhm.
you know Kevin, but I think he was with Rockford Fosgate for a number of years.
Yeah.
And he was just, when I started here, he was just a guy.
Yeah.
He worked upstairs in his office, and I knew he had like a pretty good title, but he's just a guy. It's like that with a lot of people. And I didn't. Another one I'll throw out there is Mark Eldridge.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
He's a
Absolutely.
legend in the
Yeah.
industry, and I had the opportunity to meet him finally late or middle late last year, and I
Mhm.
was so nervous, man. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna meet Mark. I've heard his name forever. We've talked about
Yeah.
his builds. I've seen pictures of it. And we go to his store, and he's like, hey man, nice to meet you. This is all my woodworking stuff that I'm working on, and this is the classroom over here. And I'm like, man, he's just a guy, just like the rest of us. So it is interesting because I've been on both ends of that perspective where I didn't know them at all when I met them, and then I've also met them where I've done nothing but hear about them for years, and it's
Yeah.
the same result in the end. They're just cool people like the rest of us.
No, and approachable. I can say I don't think I've had anyone tell me to screw off when you go to ask them. Now, don't get me wrong, they might be in the middle of a conversation or they're knee deep into something and they know they don't have time for me. I'll give you that, but I admit that too. It was just like, and I know it's before your time, but I had the pleasure of hanging out with Elma Gates for about 3 weeks. She was just a normal lady. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? And don't get me wrong, and she'd been on the news, had CD, like she was over the top, and it was just, hey, do you want to get a quarter pounder at McDonald's?
yeah,
Right? All right, let's go get a quarter. And she goes, I like the Shamrock shakes, you know. But I think that is probably it. Is that a lot of times people are approachable in our industry, and I think that's also why people do it for so long. Like I joke this year, like I broke over 30 years. And I'm like most people, like if I was a cop, I'd be retired, or if I was a fireman or worked for the government, and I'm
yeah,
still here. And look, I'm here, and we're making interviews and talking to each other. But I think that's what also fuels this industry. Is it's fun, it's inclusive. It's car audio. Okay, I'm not trying to belittle, but we're not curing cancer. We're just putting subwoofers and having some fun in a car. And
yeah.
make some money.
Yeah, man, I don't think I would still be around if it wasn't fun. You know, I may
Yeah.
have been shopping for some other kind of career or something like that, but ultimately it is that passion that keeps us all going.
Hmm. Yeah. And getting young people like yourself into it as well. And I've spoken to you on end of that.
Hmm.
If you were, say, there's a guy who was, into whatever trade, after 1 or 2 years, and said, I like working with my hands, but hey, I'm putting outlets on a wall or changing toilets is not my thing. What would you give them to say, would give cardio a chance? What would you say your first steps would be?
Trying it yourself, you know, on your
Hmm.
own car and seeing what kind of a difference you can make for yourself and your own everyday experience. And once you get it finished, and then you get like the dopamine of having completed the job, and now you're ready to turn the key and listen to the difference that you made in your own personal vehicle. You enjoy that, you enjoy it a lot, and then you start to do your research and learn that there's more that you can do to it, and go down that rabbit hole. But then you might find that you really like it. You really like doing the install because
Yeah.
it's fun, and then the other part of it is knowing that you're giving that same sort of feeling to other people when they come to you and they want a system in their car. When they come pick up the car and listen to the audio system, they get that same rush of dopamine. They're like, wow, this is awesome. This is everything I expected, everything I wanted for what I paid you guys. And, you get to the end of the day, see the happiness and know that you created another, I don't know, another car audio fanatic out there in the world. Like I think you just got to get your feet wet, start simple, do it yourself, and then go from there.
Oh, that sounds like great advice. And that is the one thing I admit from not being on the tools anymore. I miss is a customer came in with broken speakers. You repaired them. They leave with a big smile. They're happy. You could hear the difference. Their radio's broken. You change their radio. they now have CarPlay or whatever, and they're excited and seeing that part of the job every day that you could interact with 6 customers who are happy as hell when they paid you to do it,
Yeah.
and they're happy when they left. I think people underestimate that kind of job. That's what I don't understand. Like if I'm going to be an electrician, I'm going to hang outlets every 24 inches off the floor. I don't think that's very fulfilling. That's just me.
And I've never been a plumber either. And not to talk crap on plumbers,
No,
pun,
no.
pun intended, but if you're going around like clearing blockages and toilets or something for that I don't know, that's probably fulfilling for somebody, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
It's not fun. Making music sound better is fun, in my opinion.
And now there's also the other aspect of it all too is there's the audio, but now there is a lot of the convenience features too. Like, back in the day, you laugh that people would ask to put a USB charging port in a car. And they're like, dude, you help me out. I can charge my phone now, or hey, when I'm driving home now on my long drives, like little things like that can really make people happy, whatever it is.
That I personally really enjoy about what we do is the problem solving aspect and nature of it, because no vehicle is the same. You might have a customer that wants this particular like creature comfort added or this particular feature, but there's not like a direct way to do it, or maybe there's not a part available to do exactly what you want. And once you become probably a master MECP tech or something, there's there's almost always a way to achieve what you're trying to do as an installer, but it's up to you to try to come up with the solution. And that's something that I like about what we do, is you get to be creative and problem solve on the job. A lot of other professions out there, granted I haven't experienced them, but I feel like a lot of other professions out there would not have that same aspect available to them. They wouldn't have that same kind of problem solving, or like, knocking the cobwebs off the gears in your brain type thing, getting you to
Yeah.
think. So that's what I like about it. And if that is something that you like too, then I would say give car audio a try.
Also, too, as your career has evolved, and you said you started, you worked your way up. I mean, you went from, warehouse, mailroom, tech support in this conversation. Then now, I'm going to use the term loosely as trainer, because you're a lot more than that. You're almost an ambassador. And you've done that in 10 years. And what amazes me with our industry is that you can be a salesperson, you can be an owner, you can be a sub box fabricator, you can be an upholsterer. Like, so you can actually change your, I don't want to say profession, but within the profession, your specialization. And that's
Hmm.
one thing I don't know many other places that can do that. You can say, well, a plumber, okay, I'm not like not picking on, but it's just a good example where is it residential or is it commercial or is it multi family, and there's codes.
Hmm.
Hey, I have to put a 6-inch pipe here and it goes up 20 feet and that's extend 4 feet past the roof. I don't know. And like you said, well, that's what I have to do because that's what code says. But there's nothing that code says in car audio, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There isn't.
Now there are guidelines you need to follow, but for
Yeah,
like safety and stuff like that. But you're right.
yeah.
There's no code. There's nothing like that that you have to follow.
So in your career, once again, you went from, let's say, V8 fix them yourself kind of cars, and then you went to more electronic style of cars, and now obviously now they have touch screens and they're fully integrated on the CAN network and everything.
Mhm.
But now about EVs. Now, because that's new in your generation, where you could say, I went from a carburetor to fuel injection. You go, I used to beat the horse. No, but I'm just saying, like that was a good example where it changed to from multi-port to direct port fuel injection. Like that'll happen. But now your generation is EVs. And what do you think about that aspect with stereos and modifications?
It's the same kind of thing. I view them as a challenge, I think, and as an opportunity to like flex your brain and your problem solving solutions. Because rather than trying to put bigger alternators on a car and throw as much power in a vehicle as you can with big subwoofers and stuff like that, in an EV it's kind of a whole different animal. And now you've got to start thinking in terms of efficiency. Is this driver efficient? Is it going to get loud with not very much power, because you're limited to low power applications?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
now there is a whole nother aspect of the vehicle that you need to deal with in terms of like the high voltage sections that you don't really want to mess with. But in a way, it reminds me of like the guys that went on like Arctic expeditions back in the
Mhm.
late
Mhm.
1800s,
Mhm.
because it's a new thing. You're delving into it to try and understand it, and then you're going to come up with solutions for it. And that ties back into that kind of creative problem solving aspect that I like about what we do. And
Yeah.
I don't think people should view it as something to be afraid of. I think they should view it as a challenge and something to overcome. And then once you do, you fully understand it. Now you're comfortable with it, and now that's another revenue stream for your store, since you feel comfortable working on EVs. Maybe somebody else doesn't. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe you're the only guy in town that has an EV certified technician
Yep.
or something. So, don't be scared of it. View it as a challenge and something to overcome.
I there's more dynamics for me back in the day, and it was more of, like you said, the best practices of car audio. But now you have things like MECP, and of course the gateway of Skills USA, and a wealth of knowledge to be able to delve into these vehicles blindly. How's that?
Yeah. No, yeah, and you've got resources available to you like All Data. You have the MECP guidebooks, and
Yeah.
that'll tell you how to make your connections, what types of tools to use. All Data will tell you what wires are what, stuff like that. Like, there are resources out there. It's not like you are going into the Arctic blind without a
Yeah.
map or something, but you can use all those resources to make it easier for yourself.
Well, at least a guide, right? I
Yeah, at
mean,
least a guide. Yeah.
I think when I saw you first, I think it was CMA last year, and Chris Beulah there of NBC pulled out that big transmission glove and saying, "Hey, you need this for this 10,000-volt vehicle," and you're like, "What?"
It's
Right.
pretty scary.
All right. You know what? I think this is a great pace to end the conversation. I do want to say thank you for taking this time and actually and sharing a lot of this behind the scenes, because I think a lot of people see a lot of gray hairs and they don't realize that there is a career for the next generation coming up.
Yeah, yeah, no, man. There's plenty of opportunities that will be becoming available. That's the other thing that seeing those gray hairs means, is that a lot of those guys are going to be retiring within the next 10, 15, 20 years. And when those people leave, that means that there's an opportunity for somebody who's wanting to get their feet wet and get in the industry. And something that I've been told by a couple mentors of mine is to be patient, because opportunities will open. If you
Yes.
like what you do, or you want to break into the industry, get your feet wet, start to understand things. But here in a few years, there are going to be lots and lots of opportunities for uh, moving up, for making more money, new opportunities. Um, I don't view it as a negative thing, but view it as a positive thing. And while these guys are around, try to learn from them too. And if there's any other part or parcel of advice that I could offer, is that it's try to find a mentor of some sort in the industry that will take you under their wing and teach you things. And I've had several mentors, particularly here at Kicker, and most of them have been my bosses, but or my
Mm,
supervisors. But
mm.
find a mentor and find somebody who wants to see the industry grow, and try and absorb as much from them as you can, because younger people are going to be the next generation of car stereo installers, and we've got to carry that torch.
No, absolutely.